Prologue. Looking back, that day started like any other. I was walking to school, backpack slung over my shoulder, thinking about nothing important. Classes, homework, the usual routine. The street was familiar, quiet, ordinary, exactly how it should have been. Then, all of a sudden, the ground beneath my feet began to glow. At the time, I didn't understand what I was standing on. I only remember freezing, staring down as a circle of light spread outward, etched with symbols I'd never seen before. Before panic could fully set in, the air warped, and the world folded in on itself. The street disappeared. When my vision cleared, I was standing in a massive stone chamber, its floor carved with the same glowing symbols that had dragged me away. The air felt heavier, charged with something unnatural, something alive. I wasn't alone. A girl stood a short distance away, staring at me in disbelief, as if she couldn't quite believe I was real. I actually summoned someone, she whispered. At the time, I didn't know what to say. I just stood there, heart racing, trying to make sense of everything. I summoned you, she repeated, louder this time. Only later did I learn what that meant, that the circle beneath me was a summoning circle, a form of magic used to pull beings from other dimensions. That this world was called Canthar. And that the girl responsible for dragging me out of my life. My name is Myra, she said. Was my summoner. That moment was the end of my normal life. And the beginning of everything else. Chapter 1. When home slipped away. Looking back, the first thing I asked her was probably the most obvious and yet the one question I wasn't ready to hear the answer to. Can I go home? I remember the way she froze, her eyes flicking to the glowing circle beneath my feet, and then back to me. Her hesitation felt endless at the time. I don't think that's possible, she said finally. And in that moment, I felt something inside me break. My old life, the world I'd grown up in, the routines I'd clung to, the people I loved, it felt like it had already vanished. Gone. You mean, there's really no way? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, but failing. Her gaze softened, almost guilty. Reverse summoning, it's never been done. You're here now, Nathan. This is where you belong. I remember swallowing, staring at the strange room, at the circle, at her, and feeling like the floor had been pulled from under me. And yet, even then, there was a part of me that refused to give in. Seemingly impossible, I remind myself now, years later, thinking back. That's what it felt like. Impossible. And yet, as I sit here remembering it, I know it wasn't truly impossible. Not in the sense that the world of Canthar or life itself couldn't bend in ways I hadn't yet imagined. At that moment, though, I didn't know that. All I knew was the choice in front of me: stay frozen in fear, mourning a life that was gone, or take a step forward into something terrifying, unknown, and completely mine. I stepped forward. And that was how everything began. Chapter 2. First steps into Canthar. I remember stepping out of that summoning chamber for the first time. The light from the circle still faintly burned behind me, but it felt like it belonged to another life now, one I could no longer reach. Ahead of me stretched a world I didn't understand, a city alive with strange noises, strange smells, and strange people. Myra walked beside me, calm and composed as always, explaining the basics of this world. She talked about mana, the invisible current that flowed through everything, powering magic and life alike, and the rules that governed it. I listened, nodding, trying to take it all in. Every word felt like a brick added to the foundation of a place I had never wanted to visit but could no longer escape. The world isn't kind to summoned people, Myra said quietly, though I didn't understand the weight of her words then. You'll need to learn quickly if you want to survive. Her warning lingered like a shadow, but she wasn't harsh. She was careful with me, guiding me gently, like one would with someone learning to walk for the first time. Then we met Tessa. She was different. Where Myra treated me cautiously, Tessa treated me like I was just Nathan. No special handling, no cautious whispers, just blunt words and straightforward explanations. Summoned people rarely get normal lives, she said matter-of-factly, eyes flicking toward the streets beyond. You'll need to adjust, or you won't last long. I won't lie, her honesty startled me. But strangely, it also comforted me. It was like finding a small anchor in an ocean that had suddenly become all too wide, all too deep. As we walked through the city, I noticed him, a boy leaning against a building, eyes sharp, calculating, almost hostile. Myra followed my gaze. Be careful, she warned softly. There are noble families who see summoned people as tools or threats. Some think we should control them. Others, worse. It was enough to make my stomach tighten. I didn't know if he was watching me because he wanted to talk, fight, or just observe. But the tension was there, a quiet hum beneath the city's usual bustle, and I knew it would follow me longer than I wanted. That night, I lay awake in a small room that didn't feel like mine, staring at the ceiling as the strange sounds of Canthar crept through the walls. Creatures moving, the hum of mana, the distant echo of voices in the streets. I could feel the city alive around me, and I realized something with a sinking weight: Canthar would never let me feel safe the way Earth once had. I thought about my family. About my routines. About the life I'd lost and could never return to. And yet, even in the darkness, I couldn't stop thinking about the possibilities. About the things I might learn here, the people I might meet, the person I might become. I didn't know it yet, but that first night would mark the beginning of everything. The first step in a world that demanded more of me than I had ever imagined. And, looking back now, I can see that fear wasn't the worst thing I had to face. It was learning to move forward despite it. Chapter 3: The First Lesson in Canthar. Looking back, I can still remember my first real day in Canthar like it was yesterday: the way the sun cut across the training grounds, the smell of the earth, and the weight of expectations pressing down on me from every direction. Myra guided me through the basics of mana control first. I had to learn to sense the flow of energy around me, to feel it ripple through the world and respond to my intentions. At first, I couldn't make anything happen. Small objects refused to move, my focus faltered, and frustration gnawed at me. It was nothing like anything on Earth. The rules were different, the flow unpredictable, and for a moment, I thought I'd never get it. But then, something clicked. A leaf fluttered in the air at my fingertips. A stone lifted, trembled, and hovered. The feeling was electric, terrifying, and exhilarating all at once. I wasn't perfect, I far from was, but small successes appeared far faster than I would have expected. I didn't realize it then, but that was the first time I truly understood that I could adapt here. Next came physical training, though it wasn't just running laps or swinging swords. Every movement blended with mana. Dodges became sharper, strikes carried energy, and my own body started to feel like it could respond to thoughts as much as commands. Tessa watched me carefully, offering practical advice. Strength isn't enough, she said bluntly, you need awareness, timing, instincts. That's how people survive here. I hated that she was right, but I had to admit it. Every punch, every dodge, every tiny movement required more than power, it required attention. Slowly, I started to get the rhythm of it, and the exhaustion at the end of the exercises felt like proof that I was learning. Then came my first real test. Myra set up a series of small challenges, moving objects with mana, defending against a minor magical construct, navigating a short obstacle course. I'll admit I was terrified. But somehow, I passed. Not gracefully. Perhaps I overheard Myra and Tessa joking that I passed like a smashed boar, but I passed. And for the first time since arriving in Canthar, I felt a spark of pride that wasn't tainted by fear. From the corner of my eye, I noticed him. Drake. Leaning against a fence, sharp gaze fixed on me, calculating. He didn't intervene, didn't even approach, but his presence was enough. His arrogant smirk told me everything. I wasn't just learning, I was being measured. And in Canthar, people like him didn't forgive mistakes. They used them. The day ended with a reminder I wasn't ready to forget. A small magical creature roughly the size of a dog but covered in shifting scales appeared near the edge of the training grounds. It lunged at me before I could react fully. My first instinct was panic, but the lessons of the day kicked in. I dodged, used what little control I had over my mana, and forced it back without letting it touch me. I stumbled, I made mistakes, but I survived. And that's what Canthar demanded: awareness, adaptation, and respect for the consequences. Mistakes weren't just learning experiences, they could be painful, even dangerous. By the time I collapsed in my room that night, every muscle aching, every thought spinning, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: alive. Stronger, maybe. Or at least more aware. That day taught me one thing I'd carry with me forever: Canthar would demand more than I'd ever faced before. And if I wanted to survive, I would have to give it. Chapter 4: A Hidden Threat. Looking back, I can see the day Drake became more than just a shadow at the edge of my vision. He didn't attack me, at least, not directly, but the way he watched, the sharpness in his eyes, the casual mockery in his tone, it was enough. "Be careful," he said, as if warning me of nothing in particular. "There are people who won't hesitate to use you or destroy you if it suits them." I didn't fully understand it then, but looking back now, I know he wasn't exaggerating. My summoning had already drawn attention from nobles, guilds, magical factions, powerful people who saw me as a tool, a threat, or both. Drake's hostility wasn't personal. It was a warning. Shortly after, the guild gave me my first mission: observe a location far from the city and watch for unusual activity. Simple enough in theory. I assumed it would be uneventful. I was wrong. While I was keeping watch, a hidden threat revealed itself: a demon lord. I can still remember its eyes, intelligent and cruel, sizing me up like I was nothing more than prey. Every instinct screamed to run. Every memory of training felt inadequate. I had no idea how to fight something like this. And then, the green light appeared. A glowing shield, unexplainable and warm, wrapping around me. I didn't understand it. I didn't know where it came from. But it protected me, kept me alive when there should have been no hope. Looking back now, I can see it was the first sign of a power I would come to know and fear in the years to follow. That night, I had a vision. Scenes flashed before my eyes: cities in ruin, skies burning, and yet, glimpses of hope, fragile and bright. A prophecy, I realized later, spoke of a summoned being who could either save or destroy the world. The details were unclear, but the message was simple: my presence here was no accident. When I returned to Myra, I could feel the weight of the guild's secrets pressing on me. They knew more about my summoning than they were letting on, and I had a sinking feeling that their plans for me were far from straightforward. Tessa, ever blunt and practical, reminded me that I wasn't alone. "They may have secrets," she said, "but that doesn't mean you can't survive. You just have to be smarter than them." By the time I lay down that night, exhausted and shaken, I realized something I didn't know at the time: surviving Canthar wasn't just about training, skill, or luck. It was about something deeper, something inside me that had begun to awaken with the Demon Lord's arrival. And looking back now, I know this was the first step, the first real sign of the power that would define my journey. The reason I had been summoned to Canthar in the first place wasn't just chance. It was purpose. Chapter 5: The Green Light. Looking back, that was the day the green light first made itself impossible to ignore. It had appeared before, fleeting, unpredictable, but now it began to show up at times I didn't expect: during training exercises, when fear or anger surged, even in moments of sheer determination. I couldn't control it, and at first, I was terrified. Myra noticed immediately. Her calm expression didn't hide her awe. "Nathan, this isn't something a summoned being has ever shown," she said quietly, as if afraid the words themselves might attract attention. I didn't know whether to be proud or scared. Mostly scared. The light flared unpredictably. Sometimes it vanished when I needed it most, other times, it reacted violently, like it had its own mind. A flicker of fear, a surge of frustration, and suddenly I'd be engulfed in it, objects floating, energy crackling around me. Tessa was more practical. "You need to focus," she said bluntly. "Don't let it react to your feelings. Channel it with your mind, not your emotions. Otherwise, well, you'll break something or yourself." Her exercises were simple in concept but exhausting in execution, levitating small objects while wrapped in the green light, forming defensive shields, and even attempting tiny offensive bursts, like pushing a magical construct backward. I failed more often than I succeeded. One day, a floating training dummy smashed through a wall, sending debris across the courtyard. Myra gave me that look, the one that said "I warned you," and reminded me that scholars had never seen a power like mine. Too much strain could harm me, or draw attention I didn't want. Eventually, with Tessa's guidance and patience, I managed something I had thought impossible, a small, stable shield I could summon at will. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. I felt a rare spark of confidence. And, inevitably, I knew someone was watching. Drake. A guild member? Or someone I didn't yet know? Whoever it was, the feeling lingered, a prickling reminder that mastery of this power was not just about learning, it was about surviving. Then came the first glimpse of what made this green light truly extraordinary. During one exercise, I felt it respond to more than just me. I could sense the flow of mana around me, amplify small spells Tessa cast, even heal minor injuries. There were flashes, visions of possible outcomes, like glimpsing the future, just enough to warn or guide me. Myra noted the potential but warned that reckless experimentation could be disastrous. Tessa, of course, told me not to overthink it, mastery would take time. The day ended with a vision that chilled me to my core. A future, terrible and unrelenting, the demon lord I had barely survived, standing victorious over my body. Flames, destruction, hopelessness, and me, powerless to stop it. The green light pulsed in response, almost as if it were trying to warn me. That was when I realized, this power wasn't just a tool for survival. It was the reason I had been summoned to Canthar. Everything I had gone through, every moment of training and fear, led to this. And if I didn't learn to control it, the consequences would be far worse than failure. Looking back now, I understand something I couldn't then. The green light wasn't just a strange anomaly. It was the first step toward defining who I would become and the role I was destined to play in a world far larger and far more dangerous than I could have imagined. Chapter 6: Finding Love. Looking back, it wasn't just training or guild tasks that shaped me that day. It was the first time I realized that my powers weren't only tied to skill or effort. They were tied to my heart. Tessa and I were out in the city, completing a minor task the guild had assigned, a simple observation exercise. Or at least, it should have been simple. I remember the sun filtering through the rooftops, the ordinary sounds of people bustling about, and the quiet chatter between us. Then it happened. A rogue creature, fast, unpredictable, and clearly not friendly, lunged at Tessa. She tried to react, but whatever she did wasn't enough. My body moved before I even thought about it, instincts overriding fear. And in that instant, the green light exploded around me, not a flicker, not a spark, but full, radiant, protective energy. It wrapped around Tessa, repelled the creature, and left me breathless, heart hammering. I realized in that moment that this power wasn't just mine to wield, it responded to who I cared for. My emotions, my concern for someone else, had fueled the light. My connection to her made it steady, precise, powerful. Afterwards, Tessa looked at me differently. Vulnerable, grateful, and honest. "Nathan. I'm glad you were here," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly. I think Her words hung in the air, and for the first time, I didn't try to hide my own feelings. I admitted, quietly to myself, that I felt the same. It was strange and comforting to let someone in like that. The moment wasn't flashy or dramatic, it was just us, walking side by side, sharing a meal in the guild grounds, joking about training mishaps, and quietly acknowledging that we mattered to each other. And I noticed something new about the green light. When I thought of Tessa, when I felt protective toward her, the light responded more steadily than it ever had before. It was proof that emotional growth, attachment, and care weren't weaknesses, they were a source of power if managed carefully. Myra noticed too. Her usual calm demeanor was tinged with a subtle curiosity. "It seems," she said cryptically, "that emotion and intent are as important as any exercise. Remember that." Even Drake or whoever was watching could see it. I felt it in the slight shift of his expression when he observed us, though he didn't speak. Subtle, yes, but enough to plant seeds for future tension. By the end of the day, the danger had passed, and the city felt quieter somehow. Tessa and I walked through the guild grounds together, sharing a meal and a few laughs. It was simple, ordinary, but for the first time, I had a quiet space in my mind to focus, to think clearly, and to experiment with the green light without fear. Looking back now, I know this was the moment I began to truly understand the link between heart and power. Romance wasn't a distraction, it was stabilizing. It taught me control, patience, and clarity. And while the world remained dangerous and Drake and others were still watching, I finally felt that I wasn't alone. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was beginning to live. Chapter 7: The Dungeon. Looking back, this was the day Tess and I became more than just partners in training, we became a team. We were officially dating now, though it didn't change the stakes. If anything, it made everything more intense. The green light had always responded to my emotions, but now it responded to hers too. The bond we shared gave it steadiness, clarity, and an unexpected strength. Myra assigned us our first real dungeon exploration. "This isn't just about raw power," she said, her eyes scanning both of us, "it's about coordination, magic control, problem solving under pressure. Trust each other or you won't survive." Dungeon expeditions were dangerous, and I explained that to myself over and over as we approached. They were filled with traps, monsters, unstable mana flows, and unknown surprises lurking in every corner. One wrong step, one miscalculated spell, and you could end up seriously hurt or worse. Inside, the dungeon lived up to its reputation immediately. Magical constructs lunged from the walls, creatures I had never seen before blocked our path, and platforms collapsed beneath our feet. Tessa moved with precision, her combat style complementing mine perfectly. Where I projected the green light shields, pushes, bursts, she anticipated attacks, struck strategically, and kept me grounded. Our synergy was developing fast, almost instinctively. I noticed something I hadn't before: my bond with her wasn't just emotional, it was practical. Every time fear or doubt made the green light flare uncontrollably, her presence grounded me. A calm word, a guiding hand, or even a look of reassurance helped me regain focus. When she shouted a warning about a trap or an incoming construct, my reflexes synced with hers in a way that felt natural. Together, we were stronger than the sum of our parts. At one point, we encountered a magical barrier, a glowing field that seemed impossible to penetrate. The solution required creativity. I channeled the green light into a controlled shape, extending its reach and stability, while Tessa used her skills to redirect energy flows and trigger the barrier's mechanisms. It worked. The wall dissolved, opening our path forward. I felt a surge of pride, not just for my power, but for how our teamwork had solved the problem. Near the dungeon's climax, a mini-boss demon emerged. Its strength was unlike anything we had faced before in training. It struck with brute force and clever magical attacks, targeting us both. I improvised, combining the green light's shielding and amplification abilities to protect Tessa while deflecting the demon's attacks. She moved fluidly, exploiting openings I created, and together we managed to overcome it exhausted, battered, but victorious. When we stepped outside, the sun filtering through the dungeon entrance felt like a blessing. I reflected on everything we had just accomplished. Tess hadn't just been my partner, she had been my anchor, my guide, and a stabilizing force for the green light. Our bond had grown stronger under pressure, and the dungeon had cemented our trust and teamwork. I also noticed, just barely, a shadow lingering in the distance. Drake, or some other observer, perhaps, had been watching. It didn't matter then. What mattered was the lesson I carried forward. Facing danger together didn't just strengthen survival, it strengthened us, as adventurers, as a team, and as a couple. And looking back now, I knew that this day was more than a milestone. It was proof that power and connection could coexist, and that together, Tess and I could face whatever Canthar threw at us next. Chapter 8: The War Begins. Looking back, I can still see the city in flames, hear the screams, and feel the heat of magic cutting through the streets. The demon invasion began without warning, catching everyone completely off guard. I remember thinking that no amount of training could truly prepare someone for the chaos of real combat, but somehow, Tess and I had become ready, together. We fought side by side, a team in every sense. The green light flowed around me with purpose, steadied by my connection to Tess. Every shield I cast, every pulse of energy, worked in harmony with her strikes, her spells, her timing. We moved like a single entity, reacting to each threat instinctively. The nobles assigned to strategic points were skilled, but unpracticed in real combat against creatures like these. Waves of demons surged through the streets, each one more grotesque and relentless than the last. I could see the fear in their eyes, the desperation in their movements. It was terrifying, but it forced me to focus. My green light had always been unpredictable, but the stakes now demanded control. It responded not just to me, but to Tess, to the need to protect the city and the people around us. I reflected on everything that had led to this moment, my training, the dungeon, the countless small exercises, and most of all, my bond with Tess. Without her steady presence, I know I wouldn't have held the line as effectively as I did. Her guidance, her calm in the chaos, even the way she trusted me, allowed the green light to reach a clarity I hadn't thought possible. Hours or maybe minutes, time blurred in the middle of battle passed in a blur of strategy, magic, and sheer survival instinct. We coordinated attacks, formed temporary defensive barriers, and pushed the demons back step by step. The city's defenders began to rally, emboldened by our example. There was a fleeting moment when it seemed victory might be possible. But even in that rare calm, I could feel the subtle tension beneath the surface, the sense that this was only the beginning. The demons weren't the only threat. I could sense observers, factions watching, powers that had drawn me here in the first place. This battle was just the opening act of a war that would test everything I had learned, everything Tess and I had become. When the dust finally settled and the last of the immediate threat receded, exhaustion settled over me like a heavy blanket. My body ached, my mind raced, and yet a strange satisfaction remained. We had survived. We had fought. And for the first time, I truly understood what it meant to face danger and to face it together. Looking back now, I can see that the war had begun long before the demons arrived. It had begun the moment I was summoned to Canthar. And Tess, she had become more than a partner in battle. She was my anchor, my focus, and the key to the power I was only beginning to understand. The city was scarred, the people shaken, and yet, somehow, alive. And I knew this was only the beginning. Chapter 9: The Tide Turns. Looking back, I can still feel the panic that swept through me the moment the demons returned. They came in numbers far greater than before, faster, smarter, more relentless. The city streets were once again a battlefield, but this time, even our best efforts seemed hopeless. Tess and I fought as one, but the tide was overwhelming. Nobles who had stood beside us were forced to retreat, some falling to injuries as the demons pressed harder and harder. Every wave felt heavier, every strike more desperate. My heart pounded with fear and exhaustion, and I realized something I hadn't fully understood before: my green light, powerful as it had become, might not be enough. I remember watching a demon lunge toward Tess, and for a horrifying moment, it looked as if it had struck her down. My stomach dropped. My breath caught. And then, the green light surged. It wasn't just a flicker or a small burst anymore. It exploded around me, wild and brilliant, as though it had been waiting for this exact moment to show its true potential. I felt energy flowing through every fiber of my being, amplifying my strength, my speed, my reflexes, but it was chaotic, unstable. I barely had control. Objects flew, shields flared uncontrollably, and the ground trembled beneath me. And yet, somehow, it worked. The surge repelled the demons, buying a fleeting moment of respite. I could feel Tess, still fighting, still alive, and that connection, the bond we shared, was the key. The green light responded not just to me, but to my fear, my desperation, my care for her. Even in hindsight, I can't describe the mixture of power and terror I felt. The energy was intoxicating, dangerous, and exhilarating all at once. I was strong, but unsteady, and I knew it. By the end of the encounter, I was drained, trembling from the exertion and the emotional weight of nearly losing her. Tess looked at me with a mixture of relief and concern, and I realized something important: my green light wasn't just a weapon. It was a reflection of everything I felt: love, fear, determination, and hope. Looking back now, I know that day changed everything. The demons had returned stronger, yes, but in that chaos, I discovered the depth of my power and the true bond one shared with Tess. And even though victory had been temporary, the surge of the green light showed me what I was capable of when my emotions and my abilities were fully aligned. The tide had turned, yes, but only in that moment. The battle was far from over, and I knew that whatever came next would demand even more than I had ever given. Chapter 10: Full Power and Reckoning. Looking back, I can still feel the surge of energy that consumed me that day, the green light flowing through me like a river unbound. The moment Tess was in danger again, everything else faded. I wasn't thinking about training, strategy, or even survival. I was reacting, instinctively, letting the power inside me erupt in ways I hadn't dared before. I fought the demon army alone, wave after wave. My green light flared around me, shielding, striking, pushing back the relentless horde. I improvised constantly, combining raw force with every lesson Myra and Tessa had taught me. Every pulse of energy, every shield and strike, felt alive, responsive not just to my will, but to my heart. And then, the demon leader appeared. Its presence was overwhelming. Stronger, smarter, more terrifying than anything I had faced. I felt fear claw at me, but beneath it, something else burned: determination, rage, love, hope. I drew on every ounce of skill, every flash of insight, every connection to Tess. The green light obeyed me like never before, bending to my emotional drive, flowing with precision and fury. The battle was brutal. I dodged, struck, shielded, and pushed forward, my body screaming in exhaustion. I could feel the strain of the green light, my power, my bond with Tess, my fear and love, all converging in a storm of energy. And somehow, against all odds, I defeated it. When the last demon fell, silence returned. The battlefield was scarred, strewn with the remnants of the fight. I ran to Tess. She was lying there, seemingly lifeless. My hands shook as I lifted her, my tears soaking her shoulder. The weight of loss, relief, and victory collided all at once. And then, I felt it. Her hand twitched in mine. A small, fragile movement, but enough to ignite hope where I thought there was none. Tess was alive. Looking back now, I realize that moment her survival, my power, our bond was only the beginning. The green light had shown me the depths of what I could do, and Tess had shown me the strength of connection. Together, we had survived the impossible. But even as I held her, I knew the world of Canthar was far from finished with us. This was only book one. The story, our journey, was just beginning. And somewhere in the shadows, I could feel eyes watching. Challenges, enemies, and powers beyond my understanding were waiting. The green light, Tess and I, we would need everything we had to face them.